I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth, let's get into it. Before this story starts, here is the part one I want you to pay attention to. When somebody asks for a break, but gets vague the second you ask what the rules are, that vagueness is the answer. Not every pause is dishonest, but if they want freedom for themselves and emotional security from you at the same time, you are not being loved. You are being stored. This story is about the price of letting somebody keep you in reserve while they go test the world. The day my wife asked for a break, I was standing over a half-stripped church pew in my workshop, pulling out rusted tacks with my grandfather's bent needle nose pliers. Outside, a Baltimore sleet had turned the alley into gray slush, and the old radiator in the corner kept hissing like it had a grievance. I remember all of that because my hands were steady until my phone lit up with Imani's name. "Can we talk tonight?" she texted. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be." Nobody sent a message like that because they want to discuss dinner plans. I knew before I knew. I closed the shop early, swept the floor twice, and still found reasons not to drive home. That was my bad habit when life got unstable. I cleaned things, straightened things, named tools in my head like inventory could save me. I had married Imani 6 years earlier in late October, when the leaves in Druid Hill Park looked burned at the edges and her mother cried all through the vows. We had built a quiet kind of life in a brick row house in Hamilton, with narrow stairs, stubborn windows, and a blue front door she painted herself on a Saturday while singing old Anita Baker songs off-key. Before this gets worse, tell me in the comments right now, if your spouse asked for a break to find themselves, would you treat that as a breakup immediately, or would you wait and hope they came back? And if you like emotionally real stories with consequences, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. I loved her in the way men like me often love. With repetition, with reliability, with groceries bought before they ran out, and car inspections handled before the sticker expired. I was not flashy. I restored antique furniture for churches, lodges, and old families who still believed craftsmanship mattered. My shirt smelled like cedar dust and leather oil. I kept a weather notebook in my truck because my father used to say men who paid attention to the sky got caught off guard less often. Imani laughed at that notebook for years, then started checking it when she planned trips. She was a bright one between us. Not louder, exactly, but brighter. She worked as a development coordinator at the Reginald Lewis Museum downtown and could talk donors into writing checks with one raised eyebrow and a warm smile. She loved clean lines, expensive candles, and those little French notebooks with ivory pages. She also had a habit of abandoning mugs all over the house with one swallow of tea still in them. If I found 3 in a day, I knew she was restless. In the last 3 months before the break, I had found mugs everywhere. I noticed other things too, but I did what married people sometimes do when the truth threatens the life they recognize. I softened it. I translated it. I gave it another name. She started locking her phone, saying work had gotten more political since a new deputy director came in from D.C. She stopped asking if I would be home for dinner. She bought better underwear, which on its own meant nothing, except she bought it right after telling me she felt invisible lately. She joined a Saturday Pilates class in Canton and came home smelling like a perfume she did not own. That night, when I walked through her front door, the house looked too arranged. Lamps on, throw the blanket folded. No music. That was the first thing that made my stomach turn, because Imani always had sound in the house. Jazz while she cooked, podcasts while she cleaned, even the local radio murmuring during a shower. Silence from her meant a decision had already been made. She was sitting at the dining room table with her hands wrapped around one of those abandoned mugs, except this one was empty. She looked beautiful and exhausted, which turned out to be the most dangerous version of her. "You ate?" she asked, because even at the edge of leaving me, she still wanted to sound civilized. I told her no, though I had picked at fries in my truck outside a corner, carry out on Harford Road. She nodded like that helped. Then she looked past me toward the kitchen, and I understood she had rehearsed this enough to require certain furniture, certain light, certain angles. "Darius," she said, I think I need some time to figure out who I am outside of being your wife. She said it gently, which somehow made it worse. I did not yell. That surprises people when I tell this story. They think heartbreak announces itself with shattered glass and profanity. Mine came in quietly. I sat down across from her, noticed she had switched to the gold hoops I liked, and hated that detail immediately. What does that mean? I asked. Time, she said. Space. A break. She stared at the table. While she said it, I had been feeling disconnected from myself for a while. I remember the radiator knocking in the hallway. I remember one headlight outside flashing through the curtains as a car passed. A break from what? I asked. From our routines? From this house? From me? She rubbed the side of her thumb, a tell she had when she was lying or near one. From everything, she said. I got married at 29, Darius. I have been moving from one version of responsibility to another. School, jobs, us, marriage. I do not know who I am by myself. It was a polished language. Too polished. It sounded like something repeated in a mirror. I should have asked less. Instead, I asked the only thing that mattered. Does this break include other people? She took too long to answer. There it was. Not proof, maybe, but enough. I am not trying to hurt you, she said. That is not an answer, and both of us knew it. Imani. My voice had gone flat. Does this break include you dating or sleeping with other men? She closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them. I do not know what I am going to do. I just know I need room to breathe. I leaned back and felt something in me go cold and orderly. Pain sometimes does that before it collapses. It becomes a clerk. Then this is not a break. I said, it is a breakup with softer branding. Her face tightened, offended by accuracy. Why are you making it ugly? She asked. Because you are making it vague, I said. And vagueness is how one person gets to be free while the other person gets told to wait with dignity. She finally looked directly at me then, eyes glossy but stubborn. I am not asking you to wait. Yes, you are, I said. You are asking without saying it. You want me preserved in case whatever this is does not work out. She cried, but carefully. That was another thing about Imani. Even her crying had a posture. I still love you, she whispered. I believed she meant it in the way people often mean love when they're dismantling your life. They mean they feel attached. They mean you have history. They mean they do not want to be hated for what they are about to do. Love is not the issue. I told her. Trust is. Clarity is. Then I made the first decision that could have gone differently. I told her she moved out to find herself. Our marriage would not be paused. It will end. She looked at me as if I had broken some unwritten rule by refusing to become her backup plan. That is extreme, she said. No, I answered. Extreme would be me begging. Extreme would be me pretending not to understand what you are really asking. We sat there for a long time after that. Finally, she said she had already arranged to stay with a friend in Mount Vernon for a while. Already arranged. That hurt almost more than the speech. The decision was not happening in our dining room. It had happened days ago, maybe weeks earlier, while I was still by her blood oranges. She moved out 3 days later on a Friday that smelled like wet concrete and old snow. I took that day off and still left before the movers came. I could not stand there while strangers carried our marriage out in stackable bins. Instead, I sat in my truck near Herring Run Park eating peanuts from the glove box and watching joggers act like life had always made sense. Around noon, my barber, Reggie, texted to ask if I still wanted my chair that evening. I said yes because grief loves routine, and sometimes a shape-up is the only thing between a man and a worse decision. Reggie's shop was on Belair Road, the kind of place with sports on mute, old men arguing about city politics, and a little bell over the door that never rang on time. He put the cape around me and looked at my face in the mirror. She leaves, he asked. News moved fast in our circles. Yeah. He clicked his tongue once and started lining my beard. Are you going to do something stupid? He asked. Depends what you call stupid. He snorted. Anything that leaves her with options and you with ulcers. That was Reggie, blunt enough to leave a mark. I did not tell him every detail. Just enough. The break. the ambiguity, the already made arrangements. He kept cutting and said, "People say they need space when what they really need is permission." Then he angled my chair back up and brushed the loose hair from my neck. "Do not give her husband access if she is done wanting to be a wife." I laughed at that in spite of myself, because it sounded like something my uncles would put on a t-shirt, but it settled in me. I went home, changed the locks that evening, and mailed her a copy of the new key code to the alarm. For the first 2 weeks, I moved through my own house like a temporary tenant. Her orchid was still on the kitchen sill. Her handwriting was still on a whiteboard by the fridge, a grocery note reminding us to buy cilantro. I did not erase it yet. I slept on my side of the bed out of habit, and woke before dawn with my hands searching the cold sheet beside me. During the day, I worked longer hours than I needed to. At night, I polished my grandfather's silver trumpet, even though I have not played in 15 years. The shine calmed me. Imani and I only spoke about logistics at first. Bills, mail, her books, the winter coat she said she forgot in the hall closet, though she had walked past it twice. Then, around the 3rd week, the messages shifted. They grew careful again. "How are you doing? I know this is hard. I hope you are eating." Kind concern from the person who had detonated the structure. I answered none of those. Not because I was trying to punish her, because I knew that tone. It was emotional bait with decent manners. If I replied, she would feel less guilty and I would feel less clear. The truth started reaching me the way ugly truths usually do, in fragments nobody intends to package as a whole. First came my cousin Alana, who worked events and happened to know half the city without trying. She called while I was loading a finished baptismal chair into a client's van. "I am not being messy," she said immediately, which is how you know mess is approaching. But I saw Imani at Duckpin on Wednesday with some guy from the museum crowd. Not co-workers. More like date energy. I thanked her and hung up before my pride could ask follow-up questions. I stood in that church parking lot with my hands on my hips, breathing through my nose like I was trying not to swing on somebody. The decision point came right there. I could have driven downtown, walked into some bar or bowling place or rooftop or whatever version of finding herself she had paid for that night, and demanded an explanation in front of strangers. For about 15 seconds, I wanted that badly. I wanted her cornered by truth. Instead, I got in my truck and drove to my mother's apartment in Park Heights, because I knew humiliation in public would not restore me in private. My mother was the kind of woman who believed in feeding people before speaking on their pain. She set down a bowl of turkey chili, slid the cornbread over, and waited until I had taken 2 bites. Then she said, "Tell me the version you are willing to hear out loud." I told her most of it, not all. Some details still felt too embarrassing to let live in air. She listened without interrupting, which was always her gift. When I finished, she folded her hands and said, "A woman who needs you available while she experiments does not miss you. She misses access." Mothers can sound merciless when they are trying to keep you from going soft in the wrong direction. I told her maybe Alana had misread what she saw. My mother gave me that look older black women have perfected across centuries, the one that says your self-deception is disrespecting both of us. "Maybe," she said, "and maybe the rain is dry. Either way, your work is the same. Stand still." So I did. I did not confront Imani. I did not accuse. I filed for a legal separation instead, not because I had stopped loving her overnight, but because clarity needed paperwork now. She called when she got served. I let it ring twice, then answered because I wanted to hear her say what I already knew. "Darius, seriously?" she said, breathless with indignation. "Are you filing papers over a temporary situation?" Temporary. That word sat in my ear like an insult. "Nothing about this is temporary to me," I said. "You left a marriage. I am just refusing to pretend the door is still closed behind you." She started crying harder this time, sloppier. "Why are you making me the villain?" she asked. I looked around my empty kitchen and almost laughed at the nerve. "Because you made a choice and want me to absorb it politely," I told her. "That is not me making you anything." She said she had not cheated before leaving. She volunteered that detail too fast. I had not asked, There's a funny thing about guilty people. They defend themselves against charges you have not filed yet. Then she said she had been confused, overwhelmed, depressed, boxed in by expectations. Some of that may even have been true. Human beings rarely lie using only lies. But none of it changed the structure. She wanted freedom with no cost. I was simply invoicing. Spring came early that year. The city thawed. Corner stores pushed crates of flowers outside. Kids played too close to traffic, and old men returned to folding chairs on stoops like winter had been a rumor. My life got narrower in some ways and healthier in others. I started taking Saturday walks around Lake Montebello with a thermos of coffee and no destination. I volunteered at my uncle's church one Sunday to rebuild a warped pulpit platform. I stopped checking my phone after 9 at night. I stopped eating dinner in front of the television. Pain was still present, but it had edges now. Then came the second fragment. Her friend Nia, who had always liked me more than she let Imani know, ran into me outside Lexington Market while I was waiting on a crab cake sandwich. She looked around first, as if Baltimore itself might overhear. I should mind my business, she said, but your wife is spiraling. That word made my shoulders go rigid. Nia told me Imani had been seeing more than one man since moving out. One from the museum board circle. One old college boyfriend back in D.C. Maybe a trainer from her Pilates studio. She calls it dating, Nia said carefully. I thanked her, though the gratitude felt strange in my mouth. Nobody likes receiving information that confirms their deepest humiliation. Still, I would rather be wounded by truth than soothed by nonsense. That night I sat on my back steps listening to somebody 3 houses down practice, snare drum badly, over and over, while I let the facts settle in. Not one man, not one confused rebound, not one moment of weakness. She had not left because some singular lightning bolt romance interrupted our marriage. She had left because appetite had dressed itself up as self-discovery, and I had nearly respected the costume. I still did not reach out. That was the second decision. That could have gone differently. I could have sent a cruel message. I could have listed names and dates and dare her to deny any of it. Instead, I blocked her on everything except email, where practical matters about the house and attorneys could be handled without her voice entering my bloodstream. I made that choice because I knew myself. Her crying still had power over me. Her explanations still made me want to rescue the version of her I married. Distance was not punishment. It was a lock on a weak door. For a while, the legal process moved like syrup. Forms, disclosures, waiting periods. We had no children, which simplified the law and complicated the grief. There would be no school pickups forcing future contact. No graduations. No birthday parties with careful seating. Just a clean break that did not feel clean at all. Around that time, I started talking more with a woman named Rochelle, who ran the restoration intake desk at a downtown design warehouse where I sourced fabric. Let me be clear, nothing happened between us then. But I remember her because she treated me like a man, not a cautionary tale. Rochelle was 42, wore square glasses and immaculate lipstick, and a laugh that started low and surprised itself halfway through. She knew I was separated because Baltimore is a city where everybody's business reaches you with your coffee. One afternoon, she handed me swatches and said, "You look less haunted this month." I said, "That sounds almost like a compliment." She smiled. "It is. Haunted Men by Ugly Fabric." It made me laugh harder than the joke deserved. Healing can begin in places that look irrelevant from the outside. Sometimes it starts with a person speaking to you, as if your future still exists. By early summer, Imani emailed asking if we could meet as adults and clear the air. Those phrases always mean one person wants revisionist history. I agreed only because our lawyer said one unresolved furniture valuation issue would move faster if we spoke directly. We met at a diner in Charles Village where the coffee tasted burnt and the booths leaned left. She arrived in a white linen jumpsuit and large sunglasses, as if heartbreak had a dress code. For one foolish second, seeing her made my chest ache with memory rather than anger. Then she opened her mouth and ruined nostalgia immediately. "I know you have heard things," she said after the waitress left. "People are talking." I stirred my coffee and said nothing. I have gone out with people, she admitted. I was honest that I needed freedom. There was again that theft of language. Freedom, as if vows had been handcuffs. Honest with who? I asked, because I remember being told this was about self-exploration, not a rotation. Her mouth tightened. You were being cruel. No, I said, I am being precise. She looked around the diner, embarrassed. Good. Some emotions deserve daylight and witnesses. Then she said something I will never forget, because it explained more than she meant to reveal. She said, I thought I had more time before you became this final. Not before I healed. Not before I moved on. Before I became final. Like my role had been to remain emotionally parked while she tested options and measured outcomes. I put my spoon down very carefully. That was your mistake. I told her. You thought my love meant indefinite availability. She started crying in the booth, and every old instinct in me wanted to slide a napkin over and lower my voice and make it easier. I did not. I finished my coffee, discussed the furniture list, and left $10 on the table for a check that barely reached half that. Outside, the afternoon smelled like bus exhaust and cut grass. A city bus sighed to the curb nearby, and two teenagers were laughing over something on the phone like life had never once ambushed anyone. I stood there under the diner awning and realized I felt lighter, not because I no longer cared, but because I had finally seen the shape of her expectation clearly. She had mistaken my steadiness for endless tolerance. Plenty of people make that mistake once. The begging did not start until August. That is important, because stories like this get flattened into neat moral lessons where consequences show up right behind bad behavior. Real life takes its time. She had months of brunches, rooftop photos, and stylish reinvention first. I know because mutual people are careless with updates, and because even blocked information still leaks through a city. Then the museum contract she had hoped would become a promotion went to someone else. One man she had been seeing got engaged to somebody else. Another stopped returning messages. Freedom turned out to require a sturdier center than she actually possessed. The first begging text came at 11:43 p.m. on a thunderstorm night. Can we please talk? I made a mess of everything. I saw it while standing in my kitchen, counting lightning between flashes like I used to do as a boy. I did not answer. Then came an email 2 days later. Longer, more polished, full of phrases about trauma, fear, self-sabotage, not recognizing herself. Again, some of it may have been true. Pain can explain behavior. It cannot excuse calculated selfishness. I read it once, archived it, and went back to repairing the cracked arm of a funeral home settee for a client. She showed up in person the following Sunday after church. I had gone with my uncle to New Psalmist because he liked the choir there, and because sitting beside family felt safer than sitting alone. When I pulled up at my house, her car was parked across the street under the sycamore tree. She was leaning against it in a cream blouse, looking too fragile on purpose. That sounds harsh, but once you have loved somebody deeply, you become fluent in their performances. The old me saw her pain and moved toward it. The newer me saw her pain and also looked for the agenda behind it. I have been waiting an hour, she said when I got out. You should not have. I unlocked my front door, but did not invite her in. The neighborhood was alive in small ways, a lawnmower droning nearby, somebody grilling, gospel music floating from an upstairs window on the next block. Real life going on while my past stood on the sidewalk asking for another hearing. Please, Darius, she said, I know I did not deserve much, but I deserve 5 minutes. Deserve is doing heavy work today, I said. Still, I gave her the porch and exactly 5 minutes on my watch. She cried almost at once. This time there was less polish, more panic. She said she had made terrible choices. She said the men she thought represented possibility had made her feel replaceable. She said nobody understood her the way I did. She said she missed our rituals, our kitchen, my steadiness, the way I folded towels the same precise way every time, the weather notebook in my truck, the Friday fish from the carryout on Erdman. That is, when the begging became clear for what it was. She did not miss me as a man. She missed the life my character had built around her. I was stupid, she whispered. I thought I was trapped, but I was safe. I looked at her for a long moment. There are sentences you wait to hear, then discover they have arrived years too late for usefulness. Safe is not what you call somebody after using him as a launch pad. I said. She flinched hard at that. Good again. Not because I wanted to break her, but because she needed a vocabulary more honest than regret. I do love you, she said. I know that now. No, I answered quietly. You know my value now that other people mishandled yours. She reached for my hand, and I moved it behind my back before she could touch me. That small motion changed the whole air between us. She finally understood she no longer had access to my softness on command. So that is it? She asked. You can shut 6 years off like a faucet? No, I said. I cannot. That is why I am protecting what is left of me. She started naming memories then, like exhibits in a case. The drive to New Orleans. The snowstorm when we made pancakes at midnight. The summer nights on the back steps listening to cicadas. She weaponized tenderness. I let her finish because interrupting would only make her feel unheard instead of accountable. Then I told her something I had not said out loud to anyone yet. Do you know the worst part? I asked. It was not heard that you slept with other men after leaving. It was realizing you thought I would still be here after. That you understood my loyalty so poorly. Her face changed then. Less pleading. More recognition. That landed deep in the rejection. I did think that, she admitted. I thought once you calmed down, you would understand I needed to get out of my system. There it was. Ugly. Plain. Almost childlike in its selfishness. Get out of my system. Like marriage was a diet. She wanted to pause for a cheat month. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny, but because disbelief needed sound. Thank you, I said, for finally saying it correctly. She started crying harder, asking if therapy could help us, if counseling could rebuild trust, if we could date again slowly. Every option she offered still required me to forget the central insult. She had treated commitment like a storage unit, something to keep while she experimented with different weather. My answer came out calmer than I expected. No, I said, there is no version of this where I take you back. She stared at me as if I had switched languages. Not now, I continued. Not after more apologies. Not after therapy. Not after 6 dramatic emails and a birthday card and whatever else you plan next. I am done. The neighborhood seemed to go even quieter right then, though I know that was just my own blood slowing in my ears. You do not mean that, she whispered. I almost pitied her then. She still believed persistence could reopen a boundary she had never respected. I do, I said. And this is the last conversation we are having outside of lawyers. She sat down on my porch step in those expensive sandals and put her face in her hands. I stood there looking at the woman I once knew better than anybody on earth and realized I did not know her at all in one crucial way. I had mistaken refinement for integrity. Those are not the same trait. After a minute, she asked, voice muffled, Was there somebody else? Is that why this is easy for you? It almost offended me that she still needed a rival to explain my dignity. No, I said, this is not easy. It is simply necessary. That was the truest sentence of the whole year. Necessary does not mean painless. It means pain with a purpose. I told her to stand up because my neighbors did not need a front row seat to prevent the collapse of her fantasy. She did, slowly. Then she asked if I could at least hug her goodbye. That nearly undid me, because old habits die in the body before they die in the mind. But I said no. I said no, because hugging her would have comforted the very person who had come to harvest comfort from me again. She walked her car with that broken, disbelieving pace people have when consequences finally stop negotiating. I watched until she drove away, then went inside and locked the door without leaning against it afterward, without shaking, without checking the window. That is how I knew something fundamental had changed. I made a sandwich, watered the stubborn orchid she left behind months earlier, and took my plate to the back steps. A train sounded faintly in the distance. Somebody nearby laughed too loud. The world had not rewarded me with fireworks for choosing myself. It had simply gone on, and that felt honest. The divorce was finalized in November. A clean hearing. Minimal drama. She wore navy. I wore charcoal. Our lawyers did most of the talking while two other couples waited on the bench behind us with their own private ruins. Outside the courthouse, leaves skittered across the pavement in dry circles. She tried once more, just with her eyes this time, to invite softness. I nodded politely and kept walking, not out of hatred. Hatred keeps a thread. I wanted none. Later that afternoon, I went to Reggie's shop for a cut, and he looked at my face in the mirror and said, "You finally came back to yourself." He was right, though not in the way that phrase usually gets used. I did not find myself through novelty or strangers or being desired in new rooms. I found myself through refusal, through staying when leaving my values would have been easier, through accepting embarrassment without trying to edit it into something flattering. That winter, I started taking trumpet lessons again at a community art center in East Baltimore, rusty and terrible at first. I also agreed to dinner with Rochelle after months of cautious friendship. It was simple, honest, almost suspiciously calm. I remember thinking calm used to bore me. Now it feels expensive. Sometimes people ask whether I ever regretted not taking Imani back once she came begging. They usually ask like regret is romantic, like pain proves depth. Here's the truth. I grieve for her. I grieve the version of our life I had invested in. I even grieve the man who would have taken her back just to avoid being alone with the wreckage. But I do not regret saying no. She did not come back because she had become safe for me. She came back because the world had become unsafe for her. There's a difference, and once you learn it, you cannot unlearn it. If you made it to the end, let me know this in the comments. Did he make the right choice by refusing to take her back, or would you have given the marriage one last chance? If you want more original stories about betrayal, boundaries, and hard decisions, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. The moment that mattered most in this story was not when she left. It was when Darius heard. I thought you would still be here, and finally understood the role she had assigned him. The porch, the diner, even that quiet no to goodbye hug, all say the same thing. Boundaries are not revenge. They are how you stop someone from turning your loyalty into a convenience. You can feel grief, remember the good, and still refuse re-entry. Those things do not cancel each other out. They prove you learned. The end.